There is nothing interesting about angels, chapter 5. By the time Cecilia made it to the shower, her hands had stopped shaking. That almost bothered her more. Fear, she thought, should have more stamina. It should not be so easily thinned by hot water, clean towels, and the familiar nuisance of wet hair sticking to the back of her neck. Chloe had offered to guard her bed. That was kind. That was the problem. Cecilia leaned her forehead against the tile and let the water run over her shoulders. Chloe was kind. Chloe was careful. Chloe had accepted the boundary when Cecilia had said she did not want her inside of her head. But accepting a boundary was not the same thing as needing one. That was unnerving to think about. Her entrance into the kitchen was announced with a popping sound as the kettle finished boiling water for tea. Cecilia brought down 2 cups, placing them on the counter. I really should be more terrified of you than I am. She fished around in the tea cupboard and brought out a box of orange pekoe, but for some stupid reason I still trust you. She was aware that water and the tea bags ended up in both cups, but was unable to follow the motions that got them there. She heard Chloe speak, but could not tell where the sound was coming from. Why should you be terrified of me? Cecilia added milk and sugar to both cups of tea and stepped back as Chloe stepped in to stir them slowly, making floral patterns in the milky fluid. I have no idea how to answer that question, because it feels so obvious. She picked up her cup, brought it over to the table, and took a seat. Chloe put the milk and sugar away, took a sip of her tea, and elected to lean against the counter facing Cecilia. She waited and watched as Cecilia struggled with what she wanted to ask. Do you think you can help me without breaking me in the process? She watched Chloe's face very carefully and noticed the flicker of doubt in her eyes before her roommate turned away. Is it a pajama party, love? A familiar voice interrupted the tense silence. Cecilia glanced over. Simon was standing in the doorway. They looked good, polished. They were not in their pajamas. Oh, right, it's Thursday, Cecilia exclaimed, hitting her forehead. I'm so sorry, Simon. I'll change out of my PJs. Chloe, can you make the drinks? Simon just laughed. Keep them on. Do you still have your nice pink satin set? If so, hook me up. Cecilia went into her bedroom and Simon followed. Once the door was closed, Simon lost their smile and took a seat on the bed. What's wrong? You look like hell. Cecilia made a sound, half laugh, half cry. I feel like I've been there. I had a night terror again, and I think it almost killed me. Simon considered this as Cecilia searched through her wardrobe, finally pulling out the pink satin pajamas. She handed them over and sat down while Simon got dressed, without mussing hair or face, and somehow showing everything and nothing at the same time. Cecilia finally looked away and tried for a neutral tone. How was work? Gunshot wound to the face. I think I've actually outdone myself. She's all set for the viewing tomorrow, looking 10 years younger than when she died. Cecilia started laughing and then was abruptly crying. Simon pulled her to the bed and wrapped their arms around her. Shh, it's okay, love. I got you. Tell me everything. Cecilia knew she couldn't do that as much as she wanted to. Chloe was in the next room and other guests would be arriving soon. She cleaned her face and squeezed Simon's hand. Okay, but not now. Simon let a smile build slowly, shifted position, wiped a tear from Cecilia's cheek, and got to their feet. Then let's get you ready for your audience, love. The gathering was a nice distraction. They had drinks and talked about work. Cecilia talked about the strange calls she'd received that week, and Jason talked about entertaining clients he had in his salon. They laughed and chatted, and the time went by fast. Cecilia tried to ignore the moments when she could feel Simon's gaze on her, and how it made her heart race and her body heat up. A few times she had to pull off her sweater and put it back on again when the moment had passed. She caught Chloe and Simon talking, and she wanted to know what they were saying, but for some reason, even when she could hear them, she could not process their words. Chloe looked almost severe. Simon looked sympathetic, which somehow made Cecilia feel worse. Kelly left first. She had work early the next morning. Cecilia waited with Jason and Raven outside until their cab arrived. When she came back inside, she was met with heavy pressure that threatened her balance, but she only rocked back on her heels slightly. She steeled herself and marched across the threshold, ignoring the slight discomfort of her ears popping. Simon got to their feet and grasped Cecilia on both shoulders, kissing her cheeks. Tomorrow after work? You still finish at 5? Yes, she answered, glancing at Chloe, who did not seem to be paying attention, but was probably reading her mind. Simon stepped back. Have a good evening, ladies. As always, it was a pleasure. They bowed slightly and left. Chloe visibly relaxed once Simon was out the door, which Cecilia found unfair. Simon was the least frightening thing that had happened all evening. Good night, Chloe. Sleep well. Cecilia started moving toward the kitchen. I'll see what I can do about the being in the mirror, Cecilia. I don't think it intended you any harm. I think it's just scared. And to answer your question from earlier, yes, I can help without breaking your mind, if you let me. Cecilia stopped and turned on her heels. Thank you. That is very kind of you. Let's talk later. Chloe made a sound and disappeared out of sight.